Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Kavita Rao, and we are here for the second Heat Forum. So excited if this is the second time you're joining us, or this is the first time, welcome. We have some really exciting speakers for you today. We're going to touch on some topics that I think are extremely relevant to what we're going through right now, as well as for studio owners or dance teachers, discussions that we need to bring up in the classroom, as well as how to deal with the emotional impact dancers are dealing with right now. So before we get started, want to make sure everyone is plugged in and connected and can hear us well. Just a few little technical things that we want to go over with you to make sure that you can appreciate everything that's coming your way. So if you can't hear anything, just click on your computer audio button, as you can see in the screen below. And this will help you figure out any technical audio issues that you have. Let's see. All right, and again, if you are joining us on your cell phone, you can also do that. If you have to jump in the car, jump on the road, and you want to continue listening, because I know you will, you can do that. Just tap on that little question mark button for any questions that you have. But you can definitely join us on your cell phone, any device, Android, Apple, whatever you have. We will be continuing there. And then, of course, for desktop users, we want to make sure that we get your questions answered. So please do click on that question button. Send us anything that you're thinking of while the speakers are speaking. Don't worry, we will get to them. And even if it's something that you think of later, don't hesitate to email us as well. So we are so excited to get started. And yes, again, at any point, you can send in those questions. And even if the speaker is already wrapped up, we'll make sure to get those questions to them. All right, and let's get started. So I want to start by introducing our first two speakers. Megan and Colleen are from Resourceful Dance, and this is an amazing company. They help dance studio owners with their online marketing, which we know how important that is, especially right now. They provide monthly marketing services along with dance studio webinars, and their team knows that so many dance studio owners feel overwhelmed and isolated as they try to grow their studios. So I would highly recommend connecting with these two ladies if you're looking to grow. So let's welcome Megan and Colleen, as they're going to provide you some amazing marketing tips for you to grow your studios and build the lives that you want. So welcome, Colleen and Megan. I'll let you two take it from here.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kavita, and thank you to Heat for having us. We are so excited to get started. Colleen is going to go ahead and get started with our presentation. So today we're going to be talking all about Facebook marketing. We know that studio owners are having to work harder than they've ever worked before to grow their businesses. So we're going to be talking today about things you can do to maximize your free Facebook account. So we're not going to be talking about paid Facebook marketing today. Free Facebook things that you can do to hopefully bring more students to your studio this school year.
That's right. So that was a great introduction, but if you're interested in learning more about Resourceful Dance, you can visit our website, resourcefuldance.com. I also want to invite you to our Facebook group. So this is a free Facebook group for dance studio owners, and it's called the Resourceful Dance Studio Owner. You can just Google it or search for it in Facebook. It's a great positive place, great place to ask questions and get support from people that are doing the same thing that you are. Also, before we get started, we do have a freebie for you. So we've created a Facebook workbook that you can grab. We're gonna send you to resourcefuldance.com/workbook. You'll get that. We'll go through it together while we're doing it, but if you want to go there now, you can grab it, or you can do it after we're done with our webinar.
Yeah, so 30 minutes is a very short time to get through all the stuff we have for today. So it also kind of recaps some of the stuff we're going to be talking about. So I would definitely go grab it. So we are going to jump right in. So we have a couple tips we're sharing with you today. So the first tip, and remember we're talking about Facebook marketing, Plan first, do later. So if you're anything like Colleen and I owned a dance studio for 8 years, and here's how I used to do Facebook. I would show up to the studio and think, oh yeah, it's Bring a Friend Week today. I'll do a post right now. So everything happened in real time. Now we've gotten a little smarter over the years, and we split up our planning from our doing. And this, we're going to show you an example of what we mean by this in a moment, but this does a couple different things. The first thing is that it really helps to take away overwhelm. You, especially right now, there's so much stress, there's so much anxiety, there's so much overwhelm circulating. So when you sit down to work, planning ahead of time makes it so you can just look at a list and get it done and be so much more efficient with your time. The other thing it does is that it makes sure, like, don't be like me and Colleen. You don't want to miss Bring a Friend Week. You want to make sure your marketing is timely. So when you take time to plan it, you're just much more likely to get things out when they need to get out. So you'll market that Bring a Friend Week 2 weeks ahead of it instead of the day of. The third thing, and I kind of touched on this already, is that because you're removing that overwhelm, you're able to work so much more when you don't have to use that brain power to think about what you should be doing. And as a busy like dance teacher, dance studio owner, you have enough on your plate. So the more you can do to make your time work for you, the better.
That's right. So I'm going to jump in. I'm going to show you what the workbook looks like. So I'll just kind of walk you through. So we created it kind of exactly how we work with our clients, but we just wrote it down for you. So you can print it out and write with, maybe get with your like office administrator or someone that does the social media with you. So if you're a solo, so you ride solo on your social media stuff, that's fine too. You can do it by yourself, but if you have someone help you, maybe sit down together. And we go through this with our clients every month. We do it electronically, which we'll go into later. But it's the same system and it works really, really well to get organized and then to go ahead and delegate after that. So this is what you get when you fill out that little form. And we always like to start by setting a goal. So we do a primary goal and then a secondary goal every single month. So right now, you're going to probably be focusing on fall enrollment because that's the big one. And then secondary goal maybe would be, you're going to take a look at your retention numbers and set a goal for retention. So making sure that the people that were at your studio last year are returning again this year. We always take a look at our analytics or insights on Facebook. You have to know what last month looked like in order to make smart decisions going forward. So we just simply write down, what was our engagement? What was the recommendations? How many did we get? How many new likes? And then this is the star when it comes to Facebook, your top 3 posts. And we're going to talk about why a little bit later, but just write down which ones got the most reach, which ones got the most engagement, which ones were shared. Try to find those top 3 posts and write them down. Next, you're going to write a list of all the things going on at your studio. So maybe it's a open house. You've got fall classes starting on this date. You've got a Halloween party coming next month, but you want to start enrolling now. So everything that's happening at your studio, you need to make a list. And then from there, we break up what's going on at the studio into social media posts, so your Facebook post. And that way you can be really intentional in your posting and when and how you're writing and what you're asking people to do, what photos you're sharing. It's very intentional instead of last minute and just scrambled together, got to get it out there. And we have in this little freebie, we have some examples of what sort of posts and videos you should be doing. And then I'll share a little bit more about what's in there later.
So yeah, and when we kind of present this system to studio owners, a lot of times it feels like, oh, this is so much work. This is so much harder than just posting. But once you get in the groove of doing this planning session, and we're going to talk about this later too, but we batch all of our posting. like we can knock out social media for the month, outside of live videos, obviously, but we can do that in an hour and then you're done, you know? So it feels like more work, but trust us, when you get in the groove of doing this way, it really does make scheduling your social media post a lot faster. So that kind of brings us to tip number 2. Colleen, you want to take this one?
So you got a sneak peek here. Engagement is everything. This is so important, this one, when it comes to your Facebook marketing. So when we get like a new client proposal, we usually jump on the phone, and one of the first things I always hear is, I have so little followers on my Facebook page. Like, I really need a lot of help because I only have 100 people that like my Facebook page. I always tell them the same thing. That means nothing. It does not matter how many people that like your post, or sorry, that like your page or follow your page. It's all about the engagement. So basically, if you have 100 people that follow your studio page that are really into posting and commenting and sharing and liking and watching the videos, that is so much more valuable than if you have 2,000 followers on your Facebook page and it's crickets. So that means nobody is liking, nobody's commenting, nobody's doing anything on your page. Because the more engagement you get, the more eyes your posts get in front of. That's how Facebook works. They like seeing businesses post valuable content. So things that their audience is into. So if your audience is liking, commenting, all the good stuff, they're going to show it to more of your audience. So engagement is at the core of what you should be doing on Facebook.
Yeah, and what engagement, according to Facebook, is, like Colleen said, likes, comments, and for video, it's also someone watching just 3 seconds of a video. And you know, the more engagement you get, the more the algorithm decides to show your content to more people, which is a great way to maximize that free marketing like we're talking about today. So some examples for getting more engagement. A really simple one is just to ask for it. So when you do a post, like if I was going to say, fall enrollment is open, we can't wait to welcome your family to our studio, I might layer on there, give me an emoji in the comments to tell us how you feel about coming to dance. You know, just asking for some sort of conversation. Another really simple one is, you know, I like to do this sometimes for our clients, is maybe don't use an image, keep it very simple and say, hey, what's the best place to get ice cream after the first night back at the studio? People love to give opinions. I mean, I like giving my opinion too, so I can't blame them, but people love to kind of chime into those sort of posts when you're asking for advice. And it doesn't always have to be about your dance classes. It can be something related to your community, other local businesses, other family things. So just kind of think like, who's my audience and what other things are they into? And so another quick tip is, after you do a post, like that ice cream idea, I could be the first post in the comments and say, I'm going to put my favorite spot in the comments. Because it's kind of like, well, Colleen used this analogy earlier when we were practicing. It's like a wedding. You know, when people go to a wedding, the music starts, it's always a little awkward getting out on the dance floor, and then a couple people go and it's like, oh yeah, dancing's awesome. So everyone's on the dance floor having a great time. And it's kind of the same thing with building engagement. If your audience is not very into commenting or liking, it's going to feel a little awkward for a while, but the more you encourage it, the more it'll happen. And we see huge differences in the studios we look at and the amount of engagement they get. So it's really something you kind of have to cultivate.
Yeah, and the bottom line is, the more engagement you get, the more people that see your post. So when you're trying to sell your fall classes or your company audition, that means more people are going to see those posts, and then more people are going to, the chances are going to go up that people are actually going to click those links to register or to sign up or whatever. So it's all about the connection instead of, you know, focusing on the sales part of it. The sales part of it will happen if you have that connection. And this quote, I like kind of went quote happy here when I was preparing, because there were so many good ones about social media, but I like this one because ABCs always be closing. We've all heard that. Now it's always be connecting when you're on social media. So just remember that the ABC, it's switched. It's not always be closing anymore. It's always be connecting. All right, my slides
okay,
are
so that's gonna
slow, so sorry.
that's all right. That
We're
brings
going
us to tip number 3. Our first tip was, now I'm already forgetting. First tip, plan first, do later. Tip number 2, engagement is everything. Tip number 3 is to use what Facebook gives you. So Facebook is always changing the options they have for business owners. So every once in a while, you have to go into your business page and poke around. So making sure that your profile picture and your cover photo has a description. You can add a couple paragraphs, you can add links. There's also this new section called Our Story, or it's not that new, but a lot of studios we look at do not have it filled out. It's almost like a mini website for your business. You can add multiple photos, you can add links, you can make things bold and add some spacing things. So make sure you have that filled out as well. And then one thing we like to do, it's kind of a little bonus tip. If you make your cover photo your pin post, and make sure you have a really relevant quote URL there and a relevant call to action, that's going to be a great way for new people coming to your business page to see right away like how they can take that next step. Because I know I've done that for businesses or restaurants where I want to find something and I have to just like scroll to find like the menu or the main thing that I came to that Facebook page to look for.
Yeah, so that's an easy thing that you can do, because new people, like Megan said, they don't want to scroll forever. They just want to know the age of your students. They want to know where you're located, and maybe just a quick little blurb about your values as a studio. And then they want to see the fall schedule and they want to know how to register. So don't waste their time, because time is valuable on social media. You have so little of it, of grabbing somebody's attention. So make sure you're putting what you need in front of their eyes as quickly as possible. Last thing I want to add to use what Facebook gives you is the reviews. So lately I've been seeing a few studios that haven't had their reviews public, and this could totally just be they didn't know how to turn it on Facebook. So I want you to just double check that your reviews are visible to a visitor, and you can do this by just Googling how to turn on my Facebook reviews on my business page. It's really simple. It's just a button. But so some of the studios that I see are they just haven't clicked the enable button. But other studios either don't have enough reviews and they feel like, oh, that's embarrassing, there's only 1 or 2, or they have a couple bad reviews, which no shame, it's all good. We can't be a business without having a few bad reviews every once in a while, so you're good. But if you don't have a ton of reviews, or maybe you don't have any, simply ask for them from your current students. So we like to throw into the newsletter every once in a while, hey, can you help us out? We want to continue to share our love of dance with others. Please leave a review on Facebook or Google. It really helps our business out. And usually that's enough to get a few every once in a while, few extra reviews. You can always give a little incentive. So either a sticker or a t-shirt or anything you have in stock at the studio already, and just say, hey, take a screenshot of your honest review and I'll send you a little bonus for doing that. Thank you. That is one way that you can get more reviews. And if you have some negative ones, by simply just responding to those negative reviews, a lot of times it counteracts the negative review because you've had such a positive response to it. So I encourage you to reply to both positive and negative reviews positively. Just say, you know, I'm sorry you had that experience. Is there anything we can do to make it right? Or send us a PM if we can, you know, see if we can figure things out. Simple as that. And that makes a big difference for shoppers, because that's one of the first things parents look at is reviews when they're shopping on Facebook. All right.
Yeah, so
oh, go ahead, Meg.
Oh no, I just was going to jump ahead, but you take it.
Okay, great. I'm trying to, but yeah, my slides are really slow. So tip number 4 is use video. This might make you like cringe already because I feel like videos are a little bit challenging, but videos are all the rage right now. It's everywhere. Video on Instagram stories and I mean, TikToks, Reels, all that stuff is all video. So you should really, really be using video on your Facebook page. It's such a great way to get engagement. All they have to do is watch it for 3 seconds and then it counts. So that's all you have to get them to do is watch it for 3 seconds. And there's also a great way to connect with people right now in COVID area. We can talk about it in a second more, but this is a great way to keep that connection going when parents and everybody's not inside your lobby and doesn't see you every day. So I'm going to go back to that workbook, Megan, and then you can kind of chat about more about video.
Yeah, so we gave you some prompts for doing video in the workbook, so be sure to read through those. And when we track, just to give you a ballpark, I mean, when we track analytics for clients, the studios that use video compared to the studios that don't have any sort of live video strategy, I mean, their engagement can be 3 to 4 times a studio that is not using video, but doing very similar things posting wise. So if you really want to kind of maximize your free Facebook marketing, we recommend just 1 live video a week, can really kind of take that to the next level. We also included some tips for doing live video. What we do see studios doing is they take a little video from class, a combination or something like that. What we'd love to see more studios do is to kind of sandwich that and put it, reframe it, so you're remembering that new clients are also using this as a way to get to know your studio. So it could be taking a few minutes at this top of that video to introduce yourself, to like tell people what they're about to see. This is our beginning ballet class. They're working on tendus from 5th position this week. This is exciting because normally they work from 1st position, or using it to kind of demonstrate your expertise. And then at the end, adding that call to action. So telling people we're still enrolling. If you'd like your child to join this class, like send us a message, comment below, and we'll be in touch. Another thing Colleen kind of touched on is with COVID, with our lobbies being closed, with parents being really apprehensive about returning, video is like your chance to connect with parents. So you're not meeting people at the front desk, you're not coming out of the studio after classes. So it can be kind of that opportunity again for connection. Colleen found this awesome quote, another quote for you. Do you want to share it, Colleen?
Sure. As a salesperson, we must be visible. We must put ourselves out there so that the buyers, when they're looking around for answers, can find us. So I want you to think about at the studio, we'll say like 8 months ago, before COVID, how many times did a parent come up to you and say, Sally, she really likes hip hop. Like, do you think she would like jazz too? And then you're like, yes, she would. Why doesn't she come and try one? You're just available. You're at the front desk. You're asking your teachers to pop out, see if anybody has questions. You're around, so parents can feel comfortable just coming up to you casually. It doesn't have to be like, we have to sign up for another class. It usually starts as a conversation. So without that lobby interaction, we have to be around so that parents can still feel like they can talk to us and ask us questions and see what you think about, do you think Tommy's ready for company this year? It's always conversations that lead into more sales, especially with your current customers. So the video can it doesn't replace it, of course, it's not the same as one-on-one interaction, but it can kind of be a sub-in. And I've seen some of our clients have been doing almost like virtual open houses where they might do a little studio tour or talk about one of their programs. And then they simply just open it up to questions so that parents can feel like they can comment really quick. They'll get their answer right away. It's right from you. It makes that connection. It tells them you're open, you're available. All the warm and fuzzies go into that. So even as you go into these weeks of starting new classes and stuff, maybe you can work 1 or 2 of those little virtual open houses in to just be available for parents.
Yeah, and a couple other just quick ideas for easy videos if it's making you feel anxious, like, oh, I don't know what to do. Another thing we suggest to our clients is like anytime you send an email, jump on Facebook Live and summarize that email on video. This has kind of 2 benefits. One, you're getting that engagement. And then the second one is like we always hear, parents don't read anything. So you're kind of increasing the chances that somebody's going to hear that information they need to hear. You can hand the camera over to your teachers or your staff. It doesn't necessarily have to be you. Quick Q&As with teachers, Q&As with students. So in that workbook, there's like 12 different prompts. You know, there's a lot of things you can do. You don't have to overthink it. But yeah, if you started with that open house idea once a week, having a Q&A with your parents, and then maybe every email you jump on video, that would be a great place to get started.
Mm-hmm. Simple as that. I know it's hard, and trust me, we do video for our business, and it's like every time it's like, oh gosh, I don't really want to do this right now, but then you do it, and then it feels good to know that people could connect with you and ask you questions. So it's worth it. It's worth the uncomfortable feeling you get when you try to do video. So let's jump into the tools that we can use, and we got all free ones for you, so you don't have to spend extra money. And this is to help your Facebook, you know, what is that, like hum like a car or something? I forget that saying, but you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know what you're going for, but if I think of it.
That's fine, whatever. But make it run like it should, like a great machine. So Trello is the first one, and we did kind of mention in the beginning that we take our planning and we do it electronically or online. And this is what we use. We use Trello. And Trello is kind of like a project management system. Hopefully you've heard of it by now, similar to Asana. There's a bunch of different ones, but we like Trello the best. And that is free. They have a paid version, but I'm sure you'd be fine with the free. And we do our same thing we gave you in the workbook, but we do it on there and keep it organized. And then we take it a step further where we delegate, give things dates, deadlines, all that good stuff on Trello. The next thing we do is we schedule our Facebook posts. So we batch them. We do a whole month at a time. That helps us be more efficient. It helps us work smarter, be more strategic with our posts, and making sure we get the balance of asking for sales versus just supplemental posts. So we can look at the whole month at a glance when it's there. There is softwares like Tailwind and Hootsuite and all that good stuff, but Facebook Scheduler is free, and honestly, it's our preferred scheduler. It works really great. I feel like it kind of prefers when people use Facebook Scheduler versus those other scheduling softwares. So we prefer the Facebook Scheduler.
And if you've never seen the scheduler before when you're logging onto Facebook, you may need to double check that you're using the Business Manager. So for your Facebook business page, it is possible to do things through your personal business page, but there's something called the Facebook Business Manager that has a few more options. And if you Google that phrase, you should be able to find some information and see where you're at. 2 other tools we love Canva. We do use the paid version of Canva. I believe it's like $13 a month. We think it's worth it because you can save color palettes and templates, and you have a few more options, but the free one is also very awesome. We also use Adobe Spark for videos. That's another good one to check out. We're big fans of using the iPhone shared album feature. So if you have teachers or office staff that is taking pictures and you can get everybody in a shared album, you kind of build a library of photos that you can pick from. So again, when we're batching that content, we go to our folder. Right there, we can just knock it out. You don't have to share photos in real time. I think something that people get confused on. Have a library of adorable images and videos you can pull from, and it makes things a lot easier. Also, insights and analytics, we use the Facebook Insights. So that's again right inside Facebook. If you're having trouble seeing that, you might need to double check that you're using the Facebook Business Manager.
All right, so I think that kind of wraps it up. I'm going to try to get to my next slide here, but I don't know if we had any questions or not. We did, there are a few questions that we normally get from people, and one of them is how often you should post. We always recommend 3 to 5 posts a week and 1 live video. Simple as that. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to spend hours on Facebook. 1 a day or 3 a week works just fine. And then the magic ticket is that live video or some form of video every week.
You guys, that was amazing and so insightful. Thank you so much. I know even just personally, I took so many great takeaways from what you're saying from my dance company, and I'm definitely sending this recording to quite a few studio owners that I couldn't make it. And I think the best part is that everything you guys talked about was free, and especially right now when dance studios are truly struggling to create revenue and generate new business, it's so important that they have these free tools that they can use to help gain business. So thank you so much for providing that insight. I know we have a couple questions. The first is, I lost a lot of students, down 50% capacity. Do you have any advice to bring them back?
Yes, I think probably one of the best things you can do right now is to start putting some shorter sessions on your calendar. I think, like Colleen and I both have children, I think everybody is feeling just a little uncertain with how school is going to go, how virtual, how remote working is going. So I think if you can kind of put like 4-week sessions, 1-day workshops, just kind of low commitment things on the calendar. Also, I think this is a year where if you usually cut off enrollment in October, I don't think this is the year that you can do that. I think all year you're going to have to be creating new opportunities for people to join in.
No, thank you. That's a great advice. And then the next question is you talked about a little bit about revving up. Can you explain that concept a little bit?
Which concept? Sorry.
I got the question, rev up, question mark.
Rev up.
So we can also, go on to the next.
It's like, yeah, I don't.
That's fine. We will go on to the next one. So you talked a little bit about the 3-second rule for making a video count. Now, is that just a Facebook rule, or is that across all platforms like Instagram and things like that?
Instagram it's owned by the same company, so a lot of their like kind of algorithm things are pretty similar. So a general rule is like 3 seconds or more. And as far as like counting for engagement, so on ads, you can retarget people that watch your video for 3 seconds, and then you can also, there's another threshold of 10 seconds. So that's also helpful to know when you're doing ads or you're boosting posts, or I don't know if you might be able, this is within the ads manager, but you can target those people that watch 3 seconds or that are really interested and watch it for a whole 10 seconds. And that doesn't sound like a long time, but in online world, that's a long time.
And just, I think, attention span world, that's a long time. I thought one of the points you brought up that was so insightful is, I know I've heard from many studio owners that when they send an email, parents do not read emails. That is literally the #1 thing I hear from studio owners. So when you talked about doing a Facebook Live to, reiterate the same message, now do you also target do you kind of copy the same platform or, I guess live that you do on Facebook to your other social media platforms?
I think I think we are always fans of using the exact same information so you can recycle that, but I do think you have to make little tweaks so that it's appropriate for the platform. So I think you could do a Facebook Live and then use like IGTV to kind of use the same message, but if you're going to do stories on Instagram, I would probably break it up into even shorter little segments and kind of think about how you're using your headlines and your little GIFs and fun things. So
can I add one thing?
Yeah.
So we also want to just take a look at who's watching those Instagram stories, because you might find that it's only your students. So they don't care about your newsletter. So don't waste your time on breaking down your newsletter on Instagram if it's only your students. If you feel like, oh yeah, parents are watching, it might be worth it, but you don't want to waste your time. So just check, you can swipe up and see who's watching.
Amazing. Well, thank you ladies so much. I truly encourage everyone watching. And again, this recording will be available on the Heat Convention YouTube for people to watch later. So if you're watching right now and you know this would be helpful for your other studio owner friends or someone that wasn't able to join us, highly encourage that you share this, and please reach out to these two amazing ladies, Colleen and Megan from Resourceful Dance. And one more time, it's www.resourcefuldance.com. And they do have that free, as they mentioned, that free workbook that you can receive on their website, which I know I'm going to go download and check out as well. So thank you again, ladies. Really, really appreciate taking the time this morning to join us and give us some insight on this new world that we have to deal with.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for having us and tuning in today. We can't wait for the rest of the presenters.
Thank you. See you soon.
Okay.
All right, so that was amazing. I know I took a lot of takeaways from that. So we're going to kind of shift gears, change focuses a little bit. Next, we are welcoming back a presenter we had on our last Heat Forum, and he gave such insightful tools on how to deal with this new normal as far as when we were just diving into the beginning of quarantine. And Dr. Goonan is back again, and we're so excited to have him back. He is a sports psychologist who earned his doctorate of philosophy in clinical psychology from Emory University. And in 1994, he opened his own private practice in Houston, Texas. Go Houston, that's my hometown. And since then, he has provided individual, group, and family therapy with an outpatient environment. So Dr. Goonan specializes in evaluations and interventions with youth with neurologically based disorders, such as attention deficit disorder, autism, pervasive development disorder, executive functioning disorders. And his interventions include individual, group, and family counseling, as well as school consultation, biofeedback, neurofeedback. I mean, this man is just a wealth of knowledge and resources. And additionally, he focuses on identity development and disorders in adolescents and adults. So Dr. Goonan is available for consultations to school districts or structured teaching for autism spectrum disorders. So today he's going to join us to talk a little bit about how we now get back into the classroom or the studio without adding this extra anxiety to your students that they're already feeling with everything that's going on. So Dr. Goonan, thank you so much for joining us again. Really excited to have you back on. You gave us such amazing insight last time, so welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back, and wonderful previous presentation. So helpful. Yeah, I'm happy to be here, and I guess, continuing on our Corona coaster, up and down, up and down. We don't know where it's going to take us, but everybody's in. So, well, without I guess further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. The way I like to think about things is, I know a lot of studios have individuals that are both younger individuals, older individuals, etc. And really what I try to do is consider that across the span, because I know you dance studios and dance teachers have to do that. They're working not only with one population, but several. So several different age groups. So let's see if we can, let's see if I can get this screen thing to work right. Here we go. Okay. So the title today is Back Together at a Distance. Really happy to be back, happy to be part of this, and happy to be helpful as much as I can. So let's get it to work. So I'm gonna kind of fly through the first couple of slides, predominantly because I really need to want to get to the last ones because they really seem to be the most relevant. Okay. This is kind of a brief progression. We already did March, April, May. Once July and August came, we hit that second wave, and that's where everything really hit a lot of divergence. So I think that's the piece that I want to focus on, is a little bit more of the divergence and where that's taken us, because that's what dance studios are looking at, and that's what dance teachers are looking at. So you have a lot of restrictions from state to state, even from city to city or county to county, are pretty variable, and the beliefs that people have at this point are just showing us pretty big variability as well. So the variable beliefs and attitudes are really going to fall into 3 categories, as most things do. One group is basically looking at the fact that it's too soon. We've got to stay quarantined. And what do? Well, they look at the information that countries practice full quarantine are now safe and open. That's what we need to do. If we just settle down, everything will open up much faster. On the other side, obviously over here, you kind of get this, nothing has really worked. Let's just move on. And they point to countries that practice that, herd immunity and are now open and safe. So looking at the data from a completely different side. And then of course you get the folks that are kind of in the middle, which is, it's not really all or nothing. It's not that we have to stay at home or we just need to just get back to business as usual. It's something in the middle. We probably do need to practice some precautions, but let's think through this. Okay. So what kind of takeaways, to me, what kind of takeaways can we have from our journey so far? One of the things obviously is that each student and family is going to have been impacted very differently. And that it has large variability, as I was telling you before in the previous slide. Some people have been affected by it directly. Individuals that have either gotten very sick and or have died. Other individuals have not, individuals and families haven't had anybody that's really been affected, or if they've been affected, they've been affected pretty minimally. So that's really the impact. There's going to be large variability in attitudes, beliefs, talked about that. We also have, as human beings, we have this tendency of a confirmation bias. Once we begin to believe something, our general tendency is usually to continue looking in that direction and interpreting information from that direction. And you're going to find that people will really dismiss contradictory information because they're pretty settled in their own thoughts and ideas. So one of the things that's not helping is when we get into these, it's either A or B discussions, and people get get highly positioned. That's probably, it's not helping so much. If there's going to be a change in the attitude and belief, it's going to come part from what's going on around us, but really understanding our context, our culture, and to some degree need. So there have been part of what's happened now. On the first slide, I was saying there is a return to school, and now spring, summer break is over. Students are getting back to school. Parents need to be getting back to work. And people are now seeing this need to get back to school, to put their children back in school, to have the children socialized because they've just been home for so long and not interacting with others. So it's driving that need, can start to drive a change in attitude or belief, just as well as anything else. And last but not least, we talk a lot about diversity. And I think, we have to also consider the diversity of belief systems here when it comes to health, wellness, and illness. So I think that's another big takeaway from what we've got so far. Our next set of takeaways are a little bit more kind of soft, and that is we're really social creatures. We crave contact, even the introverts. And what people are finding is that they just have missed people. They've missed being with people, they've missed interacting with people, and even if they're doing so at a distance, it's that reconnection that feels so good to them. And in that reconnecting, many people are beginning to reconnect with other people. A lot of times we can get involved with people because they are in our sphere of influence. They're people that we kind of have to interact, they're coworkers, but it almost becomes as they're necessary for the project. They have a very specific kind of role in our life. But one of the things that's been happening more and more is that people are really beginning to connect with each other and really start to understand different thoughts, ideas, processes, because we have, in many senses, we've kind of forgotten the importance of play and slowing down. So I added those two things to that, because I think that's what's happening, is we really were moving at a very, very fast pace. I've got some individuals that I know that are from various other parts in the world and not the US, and they say, well, it's kind of a US thing. Everything moves a lot faster here. There's not as much slowdown. So, and I can kind of agree with that, having been other places. But the pace oftentimes feels very different. Go back to that other one. We really forgot the joy of play. A lot of kids just really want to be with each other and just playing with each other creatively and interactively. And last little piece is we may actually get our small towns back. There's a lot of folks now, because we've got work from home, and that's becoming much more prevalent. The experiment's been run, and a lot of people do not actually necessarily need to be in the office to conduct good business. As a result, the need to be urbanized, the need to be close and in town has now, seems to be getting to be less. So it's actually maybe a positive thing that some of the small outlying towns may see a growth and resurgence. And that's certainly the case from different real estate things that I'm reading, that real estate sales in outlying towns are starting to increase. So that's a good thing. So now we're kind of back together, but let's think about at a respective distance. I think I got two things going on at the same time. That we have to really respect other people's thoughts, ideas, beliefs. We have to be respectful of what we're being asked to do. Those rules are getting handed to us by the CDC, by our states, or by the countries. I'm sorry, by the states or by the counties, and also by the organizations. So even if a county is more open, sometimes an organization inside of that company or inside of that county will be more closed. So there's just a lot of logistic things, and there's no shortage of posters or things that we can find that that will point to that. So. The next thing is, when we think about the logistics, we really want to think first and foremost, we want to think about health, but we also really want to think first and foremost about our safety. I'm sorry, I'm looking down from time to time because I need to check my timer and it goes off. We have to think about our safety. And more so than anything else, our safety is really driven by the organization and staff attitudes, less so by the regulations. So if individuals really seem to be engaging in the process of sanitization, but they're really annoyed with it, that conveys for individuals that are more concerned with it, the organization or the staff's true belief systems and whether or not they're going to feel safe with that individual. So we really have to think about our own staff, our own organizational and staff attitudes. So I just ask people to really think about it. What are your organizational and personal attitudes? Is there any degree of inconsistency? What do you think the nonverbals of that convey more so than the technical elements? Also, what is your personal level of acceptance for the frameworks of other individuals? I find that, again, some people are pretty staunch in their belief systems. I don't know if vilify is the right word, but certainly frown upon individuals who have a difference from their own perspective. So it's really important to just do a little bit of self, kind of self-reflection and respective for for your thoughts and ideas and the framework, your acceptance of the framework of others. Right? The other thing too is that it allows us to be at a reflective distance. Right? Old psychology theorist Sullivan talked about our needs for safety really being our needs to know that we will continue to survive. I'll have food in my mouth, I'll have a roof over my head, I'll have clothes over my back, nothing's going to come and kill me. So there was that safety need. But he also talked about the security need, and our security need is really this need to feel loved, to feel lovable, and also to feel competent. So if we look at that, one of the things that has shifted a little bit is this whole competency need. Many dancers in their family, and this is the measurement picture there, many dancers in their families are often more interested in their position within the company or the role they got assigned, where they are in the performance, rather than real improvement in competence. And looking at your position in the company and or the roles you're chosen for as being an outgrowth of that improvement or competence. So we have to think about what are the competency markers that we want to have. Can we readjust those competency markers and really get us to look at how are we doing rather than where we are, what positions we're attaining. Goals, really, true goals, good goals, are really about input and not outcome, because we can't control the outcome of our actions. We can only really control the input that we give to our actions and our goals. The other thing too is that oftentimes dancers, especially the higher you get, they can lose their passion for dance, which is really what gets most dancers going and got them into it, amid the pursuit of obtaining some role or, again, position. So it allows us to kind of reflect back. Dance really is our expressive art. It's our ability to be creative, right? And that is so important, right? And when we think about that phrase, I think most people have heard it, dance as if no one is watching. What they're talking about is really getting yourself into this flow and the zone. When I was working for as a sports psychologist for the Houston Ballet, we used to talk about, dancing as if you're in your living room. So regardless of the performance that you're giving, or regardless of the solo that you're, the solo or the addition, really to just dance as though you're in your living room, and really to have that passion and that flow in your dance. Really important. And I guess kind of last but not least, remember that we're back together, but really at a physical distance. And what that really means, and I think this is probably the thing that is that gets to us most, especially in dance, is we're used to being so much more close with one another. Dance studios are having to limit the interactions, limit the number of people that can come into a given class. Even just schools, academics, with 6 feet of social distancing, it just becomes very difficult and very atypical for what we are used to. So what I try to encourage people to focus on is the fact that it is simply a physical distance. And yes, it is somewhat of an inconvenience for some people, because you may have to wait longer, or the class is going to fill up, or the class is going to be split. But that's really mostly what it is. It is an inconvenience. We still get to do what it is we want to do. We still get to be with people. So when we think about, again, this notion to feel loved, to feel lovable, and to feel competent, really what the physical distance speaks to is our notion of feeling loved and lovable. We talked about competency in the previous slide. And this one, I really want to talk about this whole notion of feeling loved and feeling lovable. So when that happens to us, right, we really feel a connection with others. So that connection is feeling the genuine presence of others. And I know while this picture is not particularly socially distanced, if you look at the expressions that are on these people's faces, what you see is you see the woman on the left, or I'm sorry, on the right, really having a presence with the other person, really being present, really being there for her. You can tell the only focus that she's got is on the other person. Right? And that's a presence that oftentimes, I'm going to go back to how we started going, we were going really fast and we had a lot of things to do. A lot of times we were so busy with just getting to the next thing, and kind of limping by on not feeling very connected and not being very genuine when we are in the presence of others. So now that performances are basically non-existent, we can really start to focus more not only on goals of improvement, of self-improvement, but also on just being emotionally present with our students. Right? So first of all, we have to have that genuine presence to drop all the other things that you're doing, and to really move forward, listening to the other person and being with the other person, having that person as your sole focus. It's also really sensing for the other person that the individual cares about us. And in order to do that, you really have to do something that's referred to as empathetic listening. A lot of people, and these are probably our soft skill buzzwords, but when we break down empathetic listening, right, and I'm going to borrow from Brene Brown at this point, who borrowed from, Rachel Wiseman or someone Wiseman, I can't remember, who borrowed from, in any event, what you're looking at is there really being 4 components, and unfortunately I didn't put these down. But you're looking at perspective taking, really being empathetic with another individual is the ability to take the perspective of another individual. And so that's that self-reflection that I was asking people to do. Can you really adopt the position of somebody else? Can you truly understand what their perspective is? Okay. The second thing is to stay out of judgment, because oftentimes we can understand somebody's perspective, but we get pretty judgmental about it. Oh, you shouldn't feel that, or look on the bright side, or at least it's not something else. And the sharp stick in the eye defense is pretty poor defense when somebody's in a hurt position or somebody's in a difficult position. So that at least version of listening to others, probably not our best idea. It's really recognizing the emotion of others and connecting with that emotion through our own experiences, through really connecting with something in our lives that feels like that. However, I want to put one strong caveat in there, and that is, it is not to say, oh, I know exactly how you feel. If anybody's ever been on the receiving end of that when they're in a really rough place, we know that that doesn't always fall well with us. So it really is to just emotionally be in touch with that allows us to listen from a very different position with the individuals that we're talking with. Right? And that really tells us that people are caring about us, not just wanting to relay their story, but caring about us. And the last part is really then communicating that, communicating with your emotions, with nonverbals, with your nonverbal communication, that you're really caring for that individual and you're really understanding that individual's position. Okay, our connection really is nonverbal, and I think that's in large part of what got missed in all of our video time, in all of our online connection. is that we miss out on the actual presence of the other individual. We can get the nonverbals behind our speech patterns, our inflections. We can get that. We can even get the looking at other individuals. Although I have to tell you, oftentimes, there's no shortage of people who are on their devices, and you can tell they're looking all over the place. They're fiddling with something, they're playing with the dog, they're doing whatever, and they're giving lots of nonverbal communication that I'm not really here. Even if I'm listening and I can repeat, I'm not really here. So most of our connection is nonverbal, and really importantly, and I can kind of tell you this. As a male psychologist. One of the very unfortunate rules or guidelines for male psychologists is we stay very much out of the touch arena. There are just so many ways that can wind up being misconstrued, misinterpreted, etc. And so you have to really be able to convey your connection through the honest shared emotions and shared perspective with the other individual, not through touch. And touch is really not a necessary component. If you get there and you're feeling like you just want to reach out, I had one client that I've been working with for years. And he's about 12 years old, and they're moving. And mom was present at the time, and she basically said, I don't know how you feel about it, but would it be okay to get a hug? And I was like, most definitely. So we can always ask for permission if we're feeling like that. Or sometimes we can just say, gosh, I just want to reach out and hug you. And if you have that genuine sense that that's where the other person is, it'll be conveyed with your words and your nonverbals as well as it would ever be conveyed with touch. So there's a line in a Jack Johnson song that I think really sums it up. Okay. I think that is it, and it's time for...
I'm back. Thank you so much, Dr. Goonan. That was really, you put so much thought and effort and insight into, the whole sequence of breaking down the months and really giving us the full story, because I think sometimes we get lost in just what's happening right now and how do we deal with it versus seeing the big picture. I have a couple questions. One is, I know you talked earlier in your presentation about it starts from like your staff and how they approach certain safety guidelines, and that is how your students will approach it, and the attitudes. How do you, let's say you have one staff member that maybe doesn't, think that the rules and the guidelines you've set up are something that they're willing to do. How do you help kind of guide them in that direction of realizing how important it is for their attitude to align with your studio, and so that the students also receive it in that way?
Yeah, I think the first thing that you've got to do is really talk with the staff member and try to understand where the staff member is coming from. So we can do the on high, oh, you must believe this, you've got to think this way. But we really need to understand where that person's coming from. Remember, we've got that context in the culture. There are some folks that are, and I know many folks who are business owners and have either had to file for bankruptcy or on the verge of bankruptcy. And so what's their context? Their context is very likely to be driven by the fact that this is driving you to financial ruin. And so, they're barely scraping by. They may be in a single income household or a double income household, and they weren't, and again, they're kind of barely scraping by. And so now look at their attitude, look at their perspective. We need to just get working and just let this go and move on. I think the first thing is really to understand what their perspective is, and then as best as possible to try to convey what the company and organization's perspective is. The other thing too is that companies are actually somewhat inconsistent. I was called in to work with an organization, and basically the higher ups, like the president and vice president, neither one of them, while they've got all the rules posted and everybody will get in trouble by HR, neither one of them really practices anything that's in the rules. So you really want to look at what is, what's their perspective as well. What are the higher ups saying? What's coming from the top down.
I mean, it really does, right? It's top down, where, whatever the people at the top said is really the culture and the feeling that'll get trickled down. So
yeah. What they see. You're right. Not what they say, it's what they said. What do they show?
Exactly. Actions always speak louder than words. So, and I think that was so apparent in the way that you talked about that connection. It doesn't have to be that physical touch. It's really, how can you show someone by your presence and your listening, and even just the way that you communicate, even without that physical touch. It can really show someone a lot, which I think leads me to my next question is, I know a lot of teachers are having an issue. They're so used to being physically hands-on with their students and being able to correct them and manipulate their movement, or again, like if the student's having a bad day, being able to give them a hug. You talked about some tools on how to, still give non-physical, communication, but in terms of actual like physical movement and not being able to adjust someone. Do you have any tips on how a teacher can work through that usual path that they take to adjust to this new normal?
Yeah. So the first thing we have, sometimes we just kind of need that touch. You need the physical, correction. I tell you that the individuals that are going through a rough time are gymnasts, because they have to spot. You have to spot somebody, and there's no way, you don't. Thankfully, you can, as long as you do away with, connected dance, you don't really have to spot anybody, right? You can just do individual, and you can just do from a distance. If you have to do hands-on, obviously there's plenty of restrictions about, wearing gloves and what kind of gloves they need to be, and how you should wash beforehand, and making sure you've got a mask on. So obviously you take all the precautions, but that mirroring, not only with the mirror side by side, but sometimes front to back, where you shadow somebody. Okay, I'm going to go through this. I'm going to do the movement very slowly. So you shadow somebody, right? And the instructor can either watch in the mirror and see what's behind them, or stand in front so that the student, or stand behind them so that the student can see how they're matching the instructor that's behind them, right? So obviously it's going to take more time. Good instruction always does. We want to fast track things because we have a limited amount of time, but we now also have some restrictions on that physical interaction. As for, again, as for the hugging and things like that, the other forms of touch and the other reasons that we use touch, I think a lot of it can just be conveyed by our tone of voice, by our actual physical presence with another individual.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Goonan. We really appreciate having you back. And I think a lot of the topics that you touched on, people will have personal questions that I think they should definitely reach out to you, because I know everyone's dealing with students that are going through really emotional, difficult times right now, and they are case-by-case basis. So I know, Dr. Goonan is available for consultations and be able to really help guide you through these situations. So thank you again for being here, and appreciate you taking the time.
Great. Thanks for having me, Kavita. Take care. Bye.
All right, so we have so much information and really getting into some deep stuff here, and we are going to just continue on. I'm really excited about this next speaker. I think it's a conversation that I've been having a lot with colleagues on how to address, and I know a lot of people have been wondering how to approach the race conversation with their students, and we have an amazing speaker joining with us next to really dive into this topic deeper and help us understand how to have these conversations. So I'm really excited to present to you that we will have Karita Griffith Walker joining us. She has so many amazing credits, not only as a performer, she was a Radio City Rockette, she was a Cirque du Soleil dancer, a reoccurring performer on the HBO hit series Boardwalk Empire. I love that show. And she is currently a member of the acclaimed tap dance company, Dorrance Dance. Other credits include that she was part of Chloe Arnold's Syncopated Ladies, which is so exciting because Maude Arnold is one of our instructors here at HEAT, so it's all in the family. And she's also a teacher at Broadway Dance Center in New York and is a tap dance professor at Pace University. So she has just such a well-rounded knowledge of both performing and teaching and education. So she's kind of moved between these worlds, between the stage and the local dance studio. And she's studied and worked with some of the best dancers there are. And because of these experiences, she's become inspired to support dance studios and teachers, specifically tap dance teachers, to reinvigorate and refine their efforts to integrate character education and history into the dance studio work, and therefore infuse students and their teachers with a renewed passion and an even stronger quest for excellence. So welcome, Karita. Thank you so much for joining us. It's so nice to meet you, even just over
Yeah. Hello. And our names are similar, so you know. Right?
Rhyme together. So
Yes.
take over, but I know we're going to have a lot of questions for you at the end, so
Great.
I will just hop on.
Okay, let me go full screen first and be ready. There we are. All right, you can see my screen? Kavita,
Yes.
can you see my? Okay, great. All right, hello everybody. Let me just move that baby on over. I'm Karita, and I am a former studio kid, competition kid. I've had a wide, varied performing career and teaching career. Most recently, now that I'm a mother of these two little people here, that's Simone, that's Naya, they help run my classes these days. I run an online tap teacher training program I've been running since 2018 called the Tap Teachers Lounge. While I am back in my hometown, since 2016, I've been in schools doing presentations about tap dance history, really doing very holistic discussions about that, involving race and all this historical aspects. Since 2016 in schools, mostly K to 5 actually, on up. So, you know, in light of everything that's been happening in this wild year and everything up to this point, I was inspired to start engaging people in some deeper discussions about race and dance. And I'm most inspired in the dance community. I think that we already have so many intersections, and so it makes me believe, and we are comfortable with being uncomfortable. We're dancers. We're always, we know how to work through things. We know how to lean into a stretch. We don't shy away from challenges. We're always up for one more time. We're some of the most resilient people walking the planet. And so when I thought about just shouting some stuff from the rooftops to everybody or talking to dancers, I was like, I want to talk to dancers and I want to talk to dance teachers. So I started doing these seminars in June about race and dance history, and I got this really wild, overwhelming response of different people from different dance backgrounds coming to the seminars and learning with me. And so I decided to then create a 6-week professional development program specifically for dance educators about how to introduce age-appropriate lessons about race and dance history into your lesson plans. So that's what we're in week 6 right now. I think we'll run again in October. I have a guide available for anybody who wants to, do some deeper dive in looking and evaluating their own dance programs and your own dance systems inside of your studio or wherever you're teaching. And if you want to get connected with me to find out about my professional development program, you can go to karitagriffith.com/start. karitagriffith.com/start is where you can get a guide for me about kind of some place to start, because I know it can be an overwhelming conversation, and kind of like figure out where to put some stakes in the ground to start from. And also, if you stay on and get my emails, then I can email you about the other times that I will be running the Roots Rhythm Race and Dance program again. So this is such a brief conversation, and I want to leave a little time for questions. So I'm just going to talk broadly about the importance of this topic, whereas perhaps it didn't feel like an important topic before. I mean, I grew up in a studio where we learned the steps. And I think maybe there's still a lot of people that are in that school of thought. It's like, you go to the studio to learn the steps. And I know that I did, and my teacher was excellent at teaching the steps. Like she gave me what I needed, Sally Mack in Portland, Oregon. She gave me what I needed to launch my professional career in New York. But what I realized when I got to New York and when I was out auditioning was that I was woefully uninformed about dance. I knew the steps, but that was about it. And so anytime it came to understanding what choreographers there were, like what kind of shows I should be auditioning for, what choreographers my style would align with, like anything about history, I was like this mute, embarrassed person because I didn't know anything. And in the tap dance community, any of you that are in the tap dance community know that it's so history-based. The legacy of tap dance is so rich and very well known, and people expect you to know it. And so I was just like I couldn't have told you anything about Mabel Lee or Baby Lawrence. Like I didn't know them. I didn't know who John Bubbles was. Like nobody told me. And so it was hard to be like kind of on the outside looking in while people are having these, really deep conversations and great conversations about dance. And I felt like I couldn't talk about what I knew, which I really didn't like that feeling. And as much as everything, that my teacher gave me, that was definitely something that it felt like it was missing for me. And I know it's missing for a lot of dancers, regardless of what they decide to do with their career. It's like, why not learn about these, great people? And certainly today, like in any Facebook group over the years, anytime you're talking about dance, inevitably, some way or another, some racial matter has a racial undertone, or it's a straight up racial conversation. Like it somehow is happening. And it comes up and then it goes down. It comes up and it goes down. Like whether we're talking about cultural appropriation and who can teach what, or we're talking about hair, or we're having, discussions about tap terminology, or, hip lay, like people having all these feelings about that, or casting disparities, tights, shoes, like we're having all of these different kinds of discussions that have an undertone or overtone, that's a thing, about race. Right. And so it's like trying to act like it's not there is not realistic. I mean, this is a recent post that I saw in a dance teacher group that says, somebody today called my studio and asked if it was okay to register her because she was African American. Like this is not back in the 50s when Debbie Allen was getting turned away from dance studios because of segregation. Right. This is in 2020. Like I've been at somebody else and I've been asked the same thing. Somebody else saying, somebody asked if it was okay for my daughter to come because I didn't speak much English. Like these are things that are still happening, and maybe you yourselves have had these experiences. And so whether we like it or not, like here we are. Anybody that was a part of the old Dance Teacher Network group, like knows that, the matter of race and Black Lives Matter is what got an entire 40,000 dance teachers strong group archived because of the level of discomfort with the topic. Right. So, I mean, it's not like, so to kind of pretend that it's not a thing, I think is not really realistic for where we are. And beyond that, we've always seen these discussions about trying to get our students more engaged, trying to get our students more invested. Do they have respect for what they're learning, from who they're learning from? For us, like they expect everything to be instant. Do they have a deeper appreciation for the work? And how do we help them to get that? And there's a lot of ways to get it. But the legacy of the dance forms that we're stepping into is one way to develop that enrichment. So if we're dealing with any of these challenges, dance history can definitely be very valuable. I don't know about any of you, but I know that I have seen in so many students in this era, like this level of anxiety that we didn't have back in the 1900s. Like I don't remember feeling it in the same way, that everything was super compartmentalized. Like okay, you got to learn, you know, it's like your history is over here, your science is over here, your math is over here. And it's like really intense learning in each of these areas, but they're not coming together. And this lack of integration and like, try to remember this, try to remember this, try to remember this. And like, they don't have relationships. I think it creates a different kind of stress on the students. And so, and they're navigating their lives. And we put dance in its own block, and we put social studies in its own blocks, we put history in its own blocks, science in its own blocks. I think it makes it a lot harder for our students to hang on to what they're learning and to integrate it, so it's not just a bunch of different boxes in their heads and they just have to hold on to this information. And then it's like about then giving them the information in ways that gives them proper weight over time, right? We need to be strengthening ourselves over time with bits of information that we can handle, more information that we can handle as our brains mature, as we mature, so that we're not just stepping out into the world, you know, without the muscle that we know that we need, and then being handed, you know, 500-pound weights and expected to understand all these different things that are going on in the world when you've had no preparation for understanding it. And that certainly is something that I have seen with so many teachers that I've worked with now that talked about with Matters of Race. They're like, I had no idea. And then all of a sudden I step out into the world and people are talking to me about cultural appropriation. You're like, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean there's racism in dance? What do you mean? And being overwhelmed by that conversation to the point that they're willing to shut down a Facebook group, okay? So what I would submit to you is that the stories of struggle, of sacrifice, of resilience that exist in dance history can help our students to build resilience and develop their creativity when they need it the most. I think clearly, you know, based on the amazing things that Dr. Gunan was presenting, it's like we, you know, our students are in need of that. We are in need of that. And what's lying right under their nose, under the very things that they're passionate about, is even more enriching stories, enriching information that can more deeply connect them to the forms that they're studying and show them the beauty that can come out of resilience in the most difficult times. So I think that it's a gift that we can share with our students, so that over time they can be building the strength, seeing, you know, the model of what's come before them, and so that when they step onto the floor, they step onto the floor with that reverence, that reverence, you know, and a sense that they can do that too, that they can step up and that they can pull themselves up and use their dance, use, you know, their art, their creativity as tools of resilience for themselves, to lift themselves up when things are at their most difficult. Right now, so many students are out there without guidance, right? Whether we like it or not. Students are on TikTok, they're living their best life on TikTok, and they may already be engaging in very serious race issues and culture issues in dance without any knowledge, guidance, or support. Who better than us as dance teachers to give them that guidance and support around this? It's like there's these dynamics and things that we understand because we're dancers, because we're dance educators, because this is our profession, that we can be helping our students and guiding them so that they navigate these things in a healthy way. And I think that it would be a nice support for parents to have somebody else helping, you know, their children to navigate these things, especially when we're dealing with young people in places like TikTok, where, you know, if you dig deep and go hard into kind of minstrelsy Black culture, you get more likes. You go viral if you do minstrelsy type stuff on TikTok. Like, it's statistically proven. This has been, you know, stuff that's being discussed for the past couple of years. And as dance educators, let's help our students to navigate that with informed minds so that they can step into it responsibly. Because whether we see it or not, and I know that we do, our students, sorry, I need to, like, my charger isn't plugged in. Our students are arts patrons already. They are members of a global dance community already. Some of them are future teachers. Some of them are future professionals. We never know which ones are going to be professionals. I was the last person my teacher thought was going to be a professional. I was definitely probably last on her list of who she thought would go for it. I was supposed to be, you know, a doctor or a lawyer. I was supposed to do something smart. That's what my dad said. But dance is very smart, as people are discovering. Dance is, you know, can be very academic. I became a professor as a dancer. I was like, Dad, I'm Professor Griffith. How about that? As a dancer, ha! Like, you know, I didn't have to become a, you know, whatever, sociology major or whatever to do it. But the reality is that our students are already out there. Our students we are all a part of a global dance community now. thankfully, because of the internet. Without it, I mean, where would we be right now? The reality is that we are all out there. Our students are all out there, and we are all standing in front of a backdrop of history that it influences the way that we experience the world and the way that other people experience us. And I think it's a great gift that we can give to our students to help them to prepare to navigate that as we are teaching them the steps. So I would submit to you that 21st century dance education should not only include technical and artistic education, but should also evolve to include the historical and contextual lessons that will make them well-rounded, informed students who are empowered with all the knowledge we can possibly give them to be strong artists and human beings. Yesterday was 9/11. You know, it's hard for me to say that without crying. I was running for my life on that day. I was 3 blocks away from the towers. You know, and the history of our country, the history of our world, we know how important that is. You know, these old, very old, dusty documents, they're very, very important, right? And they influence so much of who we are today. And we owe our presence, you know, in this world, you know, to the people who came before us. And so we all know that. And so I think that it's not wild to consider us introducing the richness of dance history, including the racial parts, including the parts that are challenging, to our students. And I think that it's a new level for us to step up to. What I have found and what my mentors have shown me is that, you know, it's the denial of the issue has been the biggest problem. It's like the things have happened, but the denial, the secrets are the problem. Anybody in their family knows that it's the secrets that keep you sick. It's not, you know, anything else. It's the denial of the thing. It's like there's so many things under the rug, you can't put a chair on it, right? You know, and I think of it in this way, and this is the last thing I'll say, I think, before I take some questions. I was doing Rockettes my first year. I was in Detroit my first 2 years before I was at the music hall. I was at the Fox Theater in Detroit, beautiful theater. And my father had a heart attack maybe 2 nights before opening. Got a call from my aunt who was in complete hysterics. After that, we fired her from making emergency phone calls because it was the worst phone call I've ever gotten. The news was bad and she was screaming. It wasn't good. So me and my brothers were completely panicking. I'm crying. I'm in Detroit. I don't know what to do. He might die. He's in surgery, like the whole thing. He survives. The next day we talk on the phone and he told me to stay in Detroit. He says, you just got the job. You don't leave a job you just got, right? So he says, okay. He said, I want you to stay. I'm going to be fine. So as soon as the season was over, I went straight home to see him. And so I said, okay, well, so what do you got to do now? Like, do you got to take some pills? Like, do you need medicine? Like, are you supposed to change your diet? Like, what are you supposed to do? And he's like, nothing. It was just something that happened. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. He's the dad. That's as far as I go. I was like, okay. He said it is. I was like, are you sure? He says, yeah. No, it's just something that happened. They put the little things in. I'm good. I was like, okay. 2 years later, he had another heart attack. At which point I flew home from New York again and I rolled up my sleeves and I did that thing that we have to do when we're grown-ups, is like take over for the parent and go, well, I'm the parent now and I'm taking over the situation. And so I started talking with the doctors and the doctor gave me this giant heart disease manual. Good. All the stuff in it. And I'm like, Dad, did you get one of these before? He's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, all right, Dad. So when we took him home from the hospital from this second heart attack, he's laying on the couch, he can't move, or, you know, he'll start to bleed, his femoral artery will start to bleed. So he's got to stay there. So I'm like, this is it. So I'm making him read this manual, cover to cover. And we sat at that couch and I made him read out loud the way he used to make me read out loud when I was a kid. And I was like, read the next page. And it was like, diet this, you know, exercise that. He was already a runner, and then get the medications, here's the things and all the things. Then after that, closed the book, we went into the kitchen and we started going through his cupboards. And I was like, this can of chili, my friend, has like all of the sodium in your entire day in it. You want to eat this? Like after we went through the label reading. And he's like, oh, it has all your sodium for the day. And I'm like, yeah. And he said, well, I add salt to that thing. And I'm like, great. Okay. Like, so we had to go through all of these things. No one wants to hear lifestyle changes. Nobody. Nobody wants to hear that they're a diabetic and they got to change what they're eating. They can't have this and they got to do this. But what are the consequences? Does ignoring it help? Does trying to act like it's not happening help? It doesn't, right? And so luckily at that point, my father looked at me as we were in the kitchen and we were looking at sea salt, and he was telling me that it was okay because it was from the sea. So how come he couldn't add a lot of that to something? Because it was natural. It's from the sea, Karita. Why can't I add that? And I'm like, okay. And finally, he looks at me and he says, do I have a disease? I says, it looks that way. He's like, huh. And so at that point, he started to take it over and be responsible for it as though it was a disease. And thankfully, 18 years later, he's still here, right? He's still here. And I'm trying to be tech support for him, socially distant on the phone, trying to help him change his Amazon password and send me an attachment on an email. It's going great. But thank God he's still here because he paid attention finally to the disease and didn't treat it as it was some kind of isolated event. What is happening here in 2020 is not an isolated event. This has been centuries in the development, and it's not going anywhere. So the sooner we get on it, the sooner that we can, keep moving forward. Because who wants to keep talking about race all the time? I don't. There's lots of things to talk about. Who wants to keep talking about racism? Good God, I don't want to keep talking about it. But the more that we deny it, the more that we keep having to talk about it. And so here we are. Kavita, I'm going to stop right here, and I can take questions if there are any, or I have questions that people ask me all the time.
Amazing. So no, I don't want you to stop talking about it because I think that we need to keep talking about it a little bit longer, just because I've run into so many people that don't know how to talk about it, don't know how to approach it. And you mentioned a word that I think resonated with me so hard, which was denial. That this isn't a thing that we need to discuss with our students. This is something that's outside the studio wall, so why bring it in? But like you said, they are going to leave the studio one day, and how are they?
It's not even outside the studio walls.
You're right. It's true.
It's not even outside the studio walls. I'm like, it's in there.
But yeah, how are we preparing our students? Because as you and I know, and as all dance teachers know, dance is giving our kids so many more tools than just steps. We know that dance is more than just a step. And I think, I want to hear so much more about what you have to say, because I think, how we implement these processes, as you say, like different ages, you introduce different things. I think that's such a longer discussion. So I know you mentioned that we had a few people ask, how do we get this information? How do we dive deeper into the actual steps that we need to take and how we lay out our program within our studio classes?
I think the broadest thing that I can say in this short amount of time is that we need to teach it the way we teach everything else. We introduce and we layer. We introduce and we layer. We repeat. We introduce and we layer. We repeat. We don't just say point your toes when they're 5 and then we never say it again, right? Or point your feet. We don't talk about relaxed ankles when they're 7 and then we don't, keep talking about it. But we develop nuance over time. You develop all these other things over time. And that's what needs to happen with these lessons as well. So the history aspect is so rich. And so I think that that's the thing. The important thing that I want to say about this, besides that, so want to think about introduce and layer, introduce and layer. The important thing in that is not minimize. Introduce, have introductory information doesn't mean minimize and say, not that bad. It's not that big of a problem, right? To Dr. Gunin's point about that, he made a point about that at the end of his session. When I was pregnant with my first daughter, we were in the birthing classes, and they start showing us these big things of dilation and the actual sizes and all of that. And I'm a little bit, deer in headlights, and I'm looking at it, and they're like, we'll give you a minute, take a break, we're going to take 10 and come back. And my husband, very well-meaning, leans over to me and is like, I think it's going to be okay, Karita, because, I broke my finger one time and it hurt real bad for a minute, but then it was just better. And I was just like, he's trying to help. He's trying to help. Like, you know, and he's trying to relate. And I'm like going, pushing out a human for hours is not your broken finger. Like, love you, bud, but it's not the same. Like, and so the like, it's not going to be that bad thing. It is that bad. Like, there's no other way to say that, you know, and that's the unfortunate thing about the realities of race. Like, I've found ways to communicate about this in ways that people can understand. But when I'm talking to adults about this, I'm frank, at least when I say, and I show imagery, you know, and I show, you know, laws and all these different things, you know, to give it real contextual background, that it's not as, you know, racism hasn't been as bad as we think. It's been worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's been so much worse. And that's the hard thing. And that's why people don't, I think, on some levels want to touch it. But if we introduce and layer, then we give students the weight that they can handle. We give students the weight they can handle. The same thing we do with our dance lessons. We don't walk in, okay, guys, like, you're 5 years old, let's start these fouettes. Okay, you're 5 years old, like, you know, we're gonna, you know, you're gonna tap dance, you're gonna improvise and say 6/8 time signature, go. Like, put it on, count them in, let's go. Like, we don't do that. You know, it's like we give them what they can handle. And then as they get that, we give them the next thing that they can handle. They take on the new information, they grapple with it, and then they go. So principally, it's that. Like, as far as all of the content, like, I've spent a lot of hours on this. I did 2 very long seminars about this. Ended up going like 2.5, 3 hours for 2 seminars. And then I just decided to create a full program because it needs engagement. It needs discussion and people bouncing ideas off each other, because the teachers I'm working with now, some are studio teachers, some are studio owners, some are program directors, like they run a department of, you know, of education. Some are elementary school teachers, high school teachers, college professors. Like, I'm working with all different kinds of people on, you know, where they are with the information and how do we work from that same content. So what I recommend is that you continue to deepen your knowledge as an adult, so that, and develop insights around that information. I'll come back to that in a second. You develop insight around that information so that then you can figure out ways to convey it effectively to younger minds. Yes, so that they can grapple with what you're teaching, and go from there. And so actually, the way I set my program up is I start with the most complex information first. Like, you know, why do people say cultural appropriation? Why do people even say that? Some people don't think it's a thing. I can show you, like, but you have to build and like really look at deep historical context to understand why it's a thing, right? So, but adults need to have as much information and insight as possible, because we always have to know more than our students.
Yeah.
Right? You know, like, we're not like, oh, I teach age 4 to 7 and that's all I know. Like, that's not how we teach. Like, we have to have sense and vision of where we're wanting to go with the lessons. And so not like we had a big talk one day and, you know, and that's that. Yeah, I'll stop there.
No, that's so great. And so this kind of leads me into my next, it's kind of a 2-part question, but at what age do you find it's appropriate to start bringing these conversations up? And then how, in, let's say, in our dance class, do you integrate, and how much time do you spend?
I start with, I mean, I teach in K to 5. So when I do school assemblies, it's K to 5. So that's where I start. My daughter is 4 and I'm teaching her about people. I'm teaching her about historical dancers now. She's 4, she gets stories, so we do that. But then K to 5 is where I start. And then time-wise, I think it really depends on your programming. Like, if you got a 30-minute class, you got a 45-minute class, like, you know, there's that, you know, like, you have to kind of brainstorm some things around that and see, one, are there some things that you can do outside of class to reinforce what's going on inside class, so that you don't put too much pressure on your class time, but still continue to introduce the information. The other thing has to do with integration. This is something that I talk about a lot with tap dance teachers when I'm working on tap teacher training program, that we have to have bandwidth as educators for teachable moments and for teachable opportunities. If we are constantly thinking, I need a new exercise to keep them interested, I got to come up with a new combo every week. No, you don't. To keep them interested, you don't have to do that, right? You can set up warm-ups that your students know. You can run one combo, or you can run improv exercises, whatever it is that you're working on. You can run those things for a few weeks and allow your students to dig into those things. What that does for you as the teacher is it gives you the chance to stop demonstrating so that you can be the educator. And that the educate word is like bringing forth. This is where you're bringing out of your students. So it's not just you like trying to remember the choreo, like I never remember. I'm like, what did I say? Like, what's the choreography? Like, I don't know what it is. Like, and I'm spending all my brain power on trying to remember the choreography and is everybody doing it right and all of that. But if they have it, or if they have the same drill that we've been running, something easy that I can call out where I am facilitating the dancer's independence, where I'm facilitating their independence, then I can walk around the room, or I can look at all my Zoom windows if I'm teaching on Zoom. Like I can do that, and there's space in my brain to go, that reminds me of a story. Let me tell you something really quick. Like, remember how we talked about this last week, you know what I mean, about this, aspect of history, or the technique that Bill Robinson used, when he's doing his running flaps. Where are his knees? Remember we watched that video last week? Where are Bill Robinson's knees when he does flaps? They're forward. He's not kicking his bottom when he does flaps, is he? Right. So we want to work on that. Like, so, but if I am constantly trying to think of what the combo is, I don't have the bandwidth to do that. Right. And so part of it, and this is something I've been talking with teachers a lot about in this last week of our session, is that we have to exercise our pedagogy in a way that we have the bandwidth to be really full educators. Because when we have only an hour, even when we are only teaching steps, people feel like they don't have enough time, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but if we are looking at one exercise and seeing and understanding that this exercise is teaching 6 things, right? Something I work on in my tap teacher training program. I'm like, oh, okay, like here's all the things that I can be thinking about and looking at, listening for with one exercise. So I don't feel like, oh, all we did is paddle and roll. Oh no, we worked tempo management, we worked tempo awareness, we worked rhythm patterns, we worked improv, we worked the technique of paddle and roll. We did 5 things in one exercise. And I pull up a Lon Chaney, I show them the track from Black and Blue really quick. They see a paddle and roll that starts on a heel drop, and I'm introducing a little bit of history at the same time. Do you see? Like, that's me having my mind framed as an educator, and not like I gotta fill the time, like I gotta fill the time with stuff.
No, that's amazing, because I do the same in my class. I have a set warm up, and it gives me the time to do I teach a cultural style as well, so what you're speaking on is exactly, really imperative in my class, because I'm talking to people who may have never heard of my style before, and it's always to an audience that it's their first time, and it's so much of what I have to do is education, but I have only an hour, usually in a convention setting, to give these kids an idea of what Indian dance styles are even about, and then how do I also give them steps and a combo and all of that. So those are super helpful things for myself as well. So I appreciate that. I know there's probably a ton more questions, but can you remind us again where people can sign up for your program and how they can get in touch with you, all of that?
Yeah, so if you want to be on my mailing list, I think the best thing you can do is get this free guide that I have that's like about looking at your dance systems, looking at equity and inclusion in your dance systems. Get that, and then say that you want to get my emails, and then you can get the information about when I'm running the program again, which I think will be next month. KaritaGriffith.com/start. I just want to encourage people to roll up your sleeves. Like, we're dancers. Like, what can't we handle? Like, I'm such a firm believer in that. I'm like, what can't we handle? And I think that we can lead. I 100%, like, I'm watching the athletes and I'm like going, okay, like they're doing this stuff. Like, we're in that position, and we have the beauty of art on our side. Like, we move in space. Like, we connect in a different way because we're not in this cerebral space. And so I have such belief in what we can do if we're willing to use our dancer strength on this issue. And I'm here to help people with the tools and the strategies and insights and those things. But I just want to keep people encouraged and focused, because like I said, it's disease. It's not just a 2020 attack, like the attack of 2020. It's what it feels like. It's what it feels like. But this is not it's not a one-time gig. What's going on? So the more focused we stay on it, the better.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Karita. I know we'll have a lot of people reaching out to you, and hopefully we can bring you back again, because I know even just amongst our HEAT faculty, we've been having these, you know, discussions, and all of our teachers have been, you know, figuring out how do we bring this aspect into what we do, and making sure that we're all staying educated. So I know that we'll want to bring you back at some point when you're free. I know you're a busy woman, 2 kids, and doing all of this amazing stuff. So I'm sure
we're busy, so
yeah.
we're hanging in there.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time, and soon.
Yeah, thank you to both the first presenters, by the way. Like, I've just enjoyed them both very much. Yeah.
All right. So I think that about wraps it up for today. I know we went a little bit over than we were expecting, but you know, we have a lot of information to cover, a lot of groundwork to talk about, and we only touched on, you know, that top layer of some of these issues, which is why it's so important that you're able to connect with our speakers after today. You know, we've gone over the ways to connect with them. Of course, we will upload this link to YouTube on Heat Dance Convention's YouTube channel. Our first webinar is also up there, which had a lot of really insightful stuff in terms of dealing with, you know, being on Zoom and all the social distancing and things that are still happening now. So take a chance to listen to that if you have a moment. And again, this will be uploaded, and we'll make sure to include all the ways to get in touch with our speakers, because from everything from marketing, which we know how important it is for studio owners right now to figure out how to keep their students, how to get new students, make sure that their students stay excited and engaged through all of that. So thank you to Colleen and Megan for really diving into all the free, I will say again, free ways to do that on Facebook, because we know right now we love free. And you can of course contact them to get even more information. And they do have that free workbook as well that they can send you once you log into their website. And then of course, Dr. Goonan, in terms of psychology and all the emotional stuff that we're dealing with. I know so many teachers are having case-by-case basis with students and dealing with certain traumas that they're dealing with at home or even in the studio. So please reach out to him. He's here for you. And then of course, Karita, we're so happy to have her on and talk about things that we all need to talk about and not shy away from, because like she said, it's here, it's now, and it's been happening, and we're going to continue all of these conversations. So from everyone at HEAT, I know Kobe and Johnny and all the people behind the scenes, Leah, I know they're so thankful to have you all here. I'm so thankful to be your host. I just love getting to dive in deep with our guests and really, you know, I know as an educator myself, I get so much from this and so much that I want to pass on to studios that I work with. So I know I'll be sending all these links to them. So hope you guys have a beautiful, beautiful weekend. Stay safe if you're in California, Oregon, with the fires, please stay safe, and, you know, just stay safe in general right now as well. We're still in a pandemic. So we just encourage you to reach out to us. We're here to support our educators. That's a huge part of the HEAT platform, is education, and how do we support that. So I will be signing off and see you guys next time. So thank you.